Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the summary for the day of 1022 to 1023 for the 11th to the 12th of December. So we're going to start off with the Kursk front first. At the Kursk front, the Russian forces continue their offensive. They are right now pushing Goevo in the southern flank. This is the main direction right now. Plekovo doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. I think it's already over. Tentatively, there is no indication of fighting at Kurilovka just yet. The past 2 days, only the Russian Defense Ministry mentioning about Goevo in the southern flank. So the Russians also doesn't seem to be pushing out from into Ukraine that much. The focus seems to be still reclaiming the Russian territory that is captured by the Ukrainian forces. In the northern and eastern flank, there is still fighting reported at Martinovka, Malaya Loknia, Krylenkoe, Viktorovka, Nikolsky, Leonidovo, Novo Ivanovka, Lebedevka, Svidiklovo, as well as Nikolaevo Darino. There is no Ukrainian counteroffensive or actions or operations being reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry do not go into details about Kursk. They only mention about fighting generally in the Kursk front. So that's all we have for the Kursk front. But tentatively, strategically, largely didn't change. Mainly is still the southern part that is we saw the biggest change. We move into the over in the Kharkiv front. At the Kharkiv front, Russian forces are reportedly fighting in Alexeyevka on the 11th of December. So it didn't mention on the 12th, so it's probably just a one-off skirmish. Fighting is reported at Klipoke, Lipsy, Starisia, as well as Voschansk. So that is pretty much the same strategic situation, nothing particularly special around this sector. There's a tank, this is an airstrike by the Russians, a fat bomb on the Lipsy, but that's all we have. Moving into the Voreshna front, surprisingly, Voreshna front is still alive. Fighting is reported in the region of Voreshna, and there is fighting reported at Zapatne. The Zapatne one is significant because this is mentioned by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on both days. So there is definitely Russian presence in this southern part of Voreshna, and maybe the fighting is coming on in two different directions. So we shall see how this continue to play out. And we move further south to the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, there is fighting reported at Petropavlivka and Kupiansk region. There is fighting reported towards Pischane from the Pischane front region, but that's all. Over the Pischane front, we have fighting reported over at Kulushkivka, Zarizove, and Lozova. By the look of it, it looks like the Russians have firm control around this sector, and they are now pushing north and south to expand the control. So tentatively, that's all. We move further south to the Borova front. At the Borova front, this is Borova, and this is the Borova front. Fighting is reported at Kopanki, Nadia, Svetiklobove, as well as Novoyehorivka. So the main focus is in this direction. I believe the main focus for the Russians tentatively is to straighten the front line. Around this sector, because this area here is looking very complicated with the Ukrainians having a salient, and the front line is very not straight. It is all over the place. It's a waste of manpower to man such a long front line. But of course, both sides is wasting the manpower. So that's all. Further south to the South Svetove front, we have fighting reported over at Druzhelyubivka, Kharkivka, as well as Makievka. Similar situation in this sector as the Russians are just simply trying to straighten the front line. But let's play on. Over in the Liman front or the Kremina front, depending on what you prefer, fighting is reported at Terni, Torske, as well as the Serbianske forestry. Of most significant is the fighting at the Serbianske forestry. Both Russian and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioned about the fighting in this area, which means that there is a significant flare-up of fighting within the forest, and it looks like the Russians are on the offensive within the forest region, and I'm not entirely sure what is the situation right now. So I want to show you something. So before we go on, I want to show you the weather situation. The temperature over in Ukraine is very cold. It's actually below zero. Definitely is snowing. If you look at the precipitation, there is a lot of snowing over on the Luhansk region, and probably the if you look at the wind condition, okay, the wind condition is moving south, so that's okay. Uh, that means pretty much there will be lesser snow, but definitely temperature is still super cold. And if you look at the feels like, it feels actually a lot colder than just a -4. So in the Kharkiv region, -5, Kramatorsk, Zaporizhia, so everything is super cold. Only within the Kherson front, but it's still a snowing situation. It's still -1. Uh, so in terms of humidity, yeah, you can see that it's only the eastern part is going to have some snow. So there's just some kind of condition for you to kind of have an understanding of the feeling. What is it like? And so this forest here is definitely is going to be all white, and the Russians are going to attack through the winter snow. So let's gonna see how this continue to play out in this sector. Over in the Sivers front, Russian forces are fighting in the region of Kharkovivka, Verkhovno-Kelyamske, and Sivers. There is a geolocation of Ukrainian getting hit by FPV drones. So that definitely shows that Ukrainians are in this region here. Particularly interesting is the north of Seversky Donetsk River is a pickup truck that was hit. So a pickup was hit by a drone. So I didn't expect that the truck the vehicle can actually drive through this area. Must be a very difficult drive. So over in the Bakhmut front, in the northern flank, we have fighting reported at Vasilkivka, Minkivka, as well as Chastivya. Geolocation of Russian forces in Kalinina region, not important. Minkivka was on the 12th, Vasilkivka is on the 11th. So there is definitely some intention to stretch the Ukrainian forces in this area, but tentatively don't expect too much. Like I said, long time ago, more than like a year, probably a year, with all the hype about Chasivya offensive, I did mention to you guys, there is strategically no reasons for the Russians to push in this direction, and I've been proven correct. So for the long time followers, you guys should know that yeah, my analysis tends to be pretty spot on. So if I feel like there is a good reason for the Russians to push, I will tell you. That's what I think. And of course, the same goes to the Kharkiv offensive. I did consistently say that there is zero reason for the Russians to go for Kharkiv city, and I'm proven correct. The Russian offensive is basically just to create a buffer zone. So that's what it is what it is. Fighting is reported as Tuposhki as well as Bilahora. So that's all. Nothing particularly special about this sector. Over in the New York front, in fact, I'm not even sure if we should continue to call this the New York front, because New York is like really irrelevant. It's like a thorax front at this moment. At the Battle of Thorax, fighting continues in Thorax City. There is fighting reported in the region of Dashne, Skibinivka as well as Nelepivka. So nothing. There's not much news regarding the this past 48 hours about Thorax. So that's all we have. We move into Pokrov. At the Pokrov front, so in case you do not know, this is Pokrov city. This is the prime objective. This is one of the most strategically important city in Donetsk, and in the Donetsk Oblast. This is the Pokrov front. So the Russian forces in the Pokrov front, Pokrov sector, there is fighting reported at Mariolivivka, Promen, and Lysivka, as well as the Chanske. Of course, there is fighting you can see from this area here, moving towards Pokrov at Vorozhenia. And over at Lysivka, there is significant changes because the entire street here, this street here is now under full Russian control. Due to the geolocation of Russian forces at the very end of the street, and there is a river going through here. So there is no way for the Ukrainians to retreat if they are actually in any of this area here. They would not be able to cross back. This is not possible. So with the Russians in this area, that means the entire street is now under Russian control. So Russians definitely now have a very strong foothold within Lysivka right now, and this is confirmed. So we move on to the Turkey sector. The Turkey sector definitely is looking less and less like a turkey. I have no freaking idea what the hell is this. I think this is like a bulldog. Is like a bulldog. You know, this is the ears and then the eyes. This is snout, the eyes here, and then you know they have this flappy chin thingy. Yeah, this is like a dog. There are no bow. Wow. So, and in this sector, Russian forces are fighting, as mentioned just now already. This is Nipsivka, Dechanske, Virozhenia, Shevchenko, Pischany, uh, in the Novopustinka region, Novotroitsky. And the Ukrainians are counterattacking right here because this area here is super strategically important. Ukrainians are counterattacking over at Shevchenko. They are also trying to push back the Russians over at Novotroitsky. However, at Novotroitsky, the Russians still progressed and they are on the verge of full capture of Novotroitsky. If not, they have already fully captured Novotroitsky. Ukrainian forces, there's a tank, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, there's a tank just southwest of Novotroitsky. There was a geolocated to be attacked by FPV drone. So you can see it is pretty intense in this sector. And if I push up a bit, you can see how close this is to Pokrov. The front line at this moment from Shevchenko all the way to Pokrov, we're talking about like less than 4 kilometers, around 3.4, 3.2 kilometers. So it's pretty close, which is why we have the fighting reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry in the Pokrov region. So Pokrov. So they are fighting in the direction of Pokrov as they continue to put pressure on the Ukrainians over at Verizenia, as well as Shevchenko, as they try to break through the center, and Ukrainian forces are counterattacking to deter this Russian offensive in this region here. The Russians, of course, are trying to put pressure on the Ukrainians in other sectors to draw Ukrainian attention away from the main push. So that's the current the setup in this area here, and the Ukrainians are also trying to prevent the Russians from flanking towards the highway. So there is the major highway, the T0406. The Russians wants to cut off the highway, and this is where the flanking operation is currently happening over at Novotroitsky, and the Ukrainians know this is going to happen. They are trying to push back and to prevent the Russians from making this succeed. Because if the Russians break through from Novotroitsky, they take the next chain of settlements here, there will be a free attack towards the highway, and that's going to be disastrous for the Ukrainians as the link between Zaporizhia city and Pokrov will be cut off. So at least the direct link, direct highway will be cut off. So that's why it's super important in this sector. So we move on away from Pokrov. We move further south in the Pokrov sector. This is the southern flank. Fighting is reported in Pushkini. Russian forces geolocated in the south of Pushkini, confirming Russian presence as the Russians now continue to push towards Ukrainka. Russian forces conquered Zoria with the confirmation by the Ukrainian mapping as well as the announcement from the Russian Defense Ministry. They have confirmed that Zoria is captured, which is also why the Frontline Changes report is called the Russian Dawns on Zoria, because the meaning of Zoria is simply means dawn. So that's the situation over in this sector. We move into the Kurakove sector. So in the Kurakove sector, there is fighting reported at Sosivka, with Russian forces securing the western part of the eastern part of Sosivka. Fighting continues over at Stariterny and moving towards Dashny. The Ukrainians are putting a very, very strong position around Stariterny, preventing Russian breakthrough towards Shevchenko. And the Russians are pushing towards Kurakove with some slight frontline change, which I already mentioned in the frontline changes report. It's like 1-2 buildings kind of thing, not very, very significant, which also does show the Ukrainians a resistance in this sector. They are putting everything they have to make sure that the Russians do not have further breakthroughs. But honestly speaking, this is really difficult because to hold this front line, yes, you can put a lot of effort, you can stop the Russians right now, but it takes a lot of effort, and that is the problem. To defend this line is so difficult, and it's not as difficult for the Russians to attack. It's actually more difficult for the Ukrainians to defend. That's the main problem right here. So we shall see how this continue to play out, and we shall see how this will continue to evolve. This pincer did not happen yet, and the Russians could attack Shevchenko and Dashni at the same time from Sonsivka and Saritani. So yeah, that's what it is. Over at Usmanivka front, there is fighting reported in the Dane region in Usmanivka. This coming in the pincer movement, but the Russians have expanded control in Usmanivka. Oops, they have a foothold, a stronger foothold in Usmanivka. Fighting is reported towards Hanivka. I think Romanivka is totally gone now because fighting is exclusively talking about Hanivka in this region here, or Anivka. The Russian forces expanded control around Vasily High as they continue to push and close up the southern corridor. Geolocation of Russian forces on the western part of Yelizavetivka, confirming Russian captures of Yelizavetivka, or at least almost full capture of Yelizavetivka. And curiously, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 11th still talk about Katerinivka and Antonivka, as if we do not know that the front line have moved. So and on the east, on the western flank, there is fighting reported at Konstantinopolsk. So that's all in this sector of Usmanivka. And we move further west. In this sector, let's call this the Constantinople sector because these two sectors is getting really different right now. So shelling is reported at Ulakli. Fighting is reported at Sukiyali, where the Russians have a strong foothold, pushing towards Roslev as well as pushing towards Constantinople. So that's the Constantinople sector. And we move further on over into the Velika Novosilka sector. So in this sector, the Russian forces are fighting in Rozdone, Novi Koma, Velika Novosilka, Blahodatne, towards Starizove. Oops, too many things I can click. And towards Neskushne, towards Vremivka, as well as fighting reported at Novodarivka. So you can see this is the main direction. This is the main big arrow push. This area here is the main big arrow push. And they are putting pressure on Velika Novosilka and the region of Blahodatne while they are trapping the Ukrainians in active combat in this area at Novi Koma and Rozdone. The Ukrainian forces actually have some success in the Rozdone region, where the Ukrainians have captured the entirety of the first street in Rozdone. They have counterattacked successfully and taken back this area here. But like I said, it does also look like a trap because it is attracting Ukrainian attention to focus all on Novi Koma and Rozdone, allowing the Russians to push on harder on other sectors of the front. So which is basically Vremivka, Neshkushne, and Sterizove, which is actually more important. Yes, this is strategically super important to protect Velika Novosilka, but the Russians may want this sector more actually, because collapsing the front line like this may be speedy, but it might also be difficult because the Ukrainian front line is nearer in this sector. Reinforcement is faster, but when you focus all their reinforcement into Novi Koma and Rozdone, then Vremivka, Neshkushne, Sterizove, and Makarivka will be no less focused on. So let's move on over into the Zaporizhia front. At the Zaporizhia front, the fighting exclusively is over at the Orikhiv sector, with Russian fighting at Novoporovska, Novodanilivka, Novoandrievka, and in the redirection of Orikhiv. Mainly is shelling over at Orikhiv. And we move on from the Zaporizhia front into the Kherson front. At the Kherson front, there is a lot of shelling. So there's one over this Mikhailivka. There's one shelling around there. As we move along the Kherson line, there is a fighting being reported at the Kozatsky Island in this area here. This reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 11th. Let me pull out again. On the 11th, they said there's one clash in the area of Kozatsky Island. But we do not know much about this thing. Shelling's reported in Potentivka, Mikhailsky, Antonivka, and Kherson. So that's all from the Kherson front. And going to the Black Sea, there is yesterday there is a Ukrainian drone attack. It's not a very big one. It's an 8 drone. It's not surface drone. It's an air drone. 8 UAV drone attack moving towards Crimea. But the interesting thing about this drone attack is that they don't come in a big wave. They come in a very slow one by one kind of thing. So they fly 1 to 2 drone every 1 2 hours, causing extended alert in Crimea and in the Black Sea region. So this actually would, I would say, more effective at wasting Russian resources, as the Russians have to keep a longer emergency period, a what I can't remember the word, a standby period and an alert period, and then they have to send fighters on combat air patrol for a much longer period of time. So that would actually drain the Russians more. I think this is a very, very good idea. But all the drones got shot down, according to the information from the Russian sources. So, but that's about it. So this is the summary for the past 2 days. Oh, there's one more thing. The Ukrainians have struck the Taganrog air base with attack camps. 6 attack camps was allegedly used. 2 was shot down by Panzer. The rest was allegedly down by electronic warfare. But the rocket fragments still fell and injured. They caused casualties. I'm not sure this is injury or death of military personnel. I would say that this could also be an excuse for didn't shoot them down. They just hit their targets, and then they call it brought down by electronic warfare. Who knows? But there is definitely damages to military vehicles and whatnot. And the Russians vowed that this attack will not be unanswered, and they will take appropriate measures. So I wonder what the Russians are going to do next to retaliate against the use of attack camps into Russian territory. But anyway, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next update. Subscribe.